to COASTER-net Uncut.
And welcome back to COASTER-net Uncut. I'm Danny Miller alongside Andy Rybarczyk. Tonight we're talking about the 2015 rides, not 2014 like Andy said earlier. Talking about 2015 rides. A big one that we're going to talk about now, we're going to talk about Thunderbird for a few minutes at Holiday World. Now, this is one that was announced back in July. This one's been announced for a while, and it's kind of fallen by the wayside, I think, with all the attention going back to Fury. And how clever of Holiday World was it to, on the day of the Fury announcement, they posted the picture of the first piece of track going into place.
Yeah,
Be like, hey, we're still building a new coaster over here. It's $25 million.
We still got something big. Like, hey.
It's like, hey, over here.
But in all honesty,
what were your initial reactions of Thunderbird when they announced it? I mean, B&M launched Wing Coaster, kind of a new thing.
Well, and I kind of suspected, like, leading up to that very last minute, I even posted that morning that I kind of felt I was almost dead on. The only thing I was completely wrong about was the theme of the ride, but I was dead on with the launch aspect, with the length aspect. I said be slightly longer than the X-Flight, and that's basically what we got. Obviously a completely different layout than X-Flight, much more elongated versus X-Flight that, curves in on itself a few times. But generally the same length. And it's the launch thing that I think is really selling this ride at this point, because as we know, B&M hasn't done a launch themselves yet. You have the quasi-launch on the Incredible Hulk, which, is it a launch? Is it not a launch? Do you consider Maverick a launch? I don't. The Hulk ride is a quasi-launch. This one's a full-on launch, using an LIM system with the flywheel, because they don't want to black out the entire state or the entire area every 3 or 4 minutes, which is a pretty innovative way to do it. But generally, I was pretty happy with Thunderbird. That I think that's an area for Holiday World that they really needed to get into. Like, I know a lot of people are upset that it's not a wood coaster, and basically saying Holiday World's known for their wood coasters. If they install anything other than a wood coaster, it's not going to feel right. And I actually feel the opposite on that, where I feel that Thunderbird does feel right for this time, for this park. I think B&M's the perfect company for it, because B&M's going to provide you with a fairly reliable ride that you're not going to have to really worry about a lot of downtime with. Holiday World's a smaller park. They have a sizable maintenance staff, but probably nowhere near as much as any Six Flags or any Cedar Fair park. So a B&M is the way to go, and I think the Wing Coaster is a really cool concept. I personally want to see more done with the Wing Coaster. That one of my great disappointments with Fury was that it was not a 300-foot Wing Coaster like we kind of began speculating about at the very end. And I think the Wing Coaster has a lot to offer the roller coaster community. And if we just simply treat it the way that it has been treated, that for the most part, X-Flight, Gatekeeper, and Wild Eagle are all kind of similar. Over in Europe, you see a few more Wing Coaster variants out there. And for the most part, they're all kind of doing the same thing. Obviously, they're unique and they have different elements, and they're, integrating that. But we really aren't stretching the way that the Wing Coaster, height-wise, we're not really putting it over 200 feet. That Gatekeeper's still the tallest Wing Coaster, I believe.
Right.
Yep. Some of them have big loops. Some of them don't have big loops. They all have the fly-through elements for the most part. But I really want to see them move this to the next level. That, B&M kind of gets stuck, I think, in pigeonholing their own designs. And it works for them. It's worked for them in the past, where you have the stand-ups, you have, the inverts. I thought when we looked at the stand-ups that you had there for a second, how far could we push the world's tallest stand-up coaster? And you had things like Mantis and Riddler and all that come out, and they were kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. But I kind of want to see them use this Wing Coaster as a way to kind of mix in different types of rides, that you can have a completely different experience on a Wing Coaster. That I always look back at what Intamin does, and Intamin has a standard train, and they use that standard train. If you take the harnesses away from it, obviously the harness has changed, but your standard chassis is being used on Millennium, on Dragster, on Maverick, on I-305. That you have all these different types of rides, and it's all using the same standard ride type or train type. And I think B&M could really use the Wing Coaster as this. That I think there's a lot to offer with the Wing Coaster. And if you did a 300-foot wing, I think it would be awesomely epic, and I would be front in line for that. So getting back to Holiday World, I really think that this is a perfect fit for them. I think the launch puts a whole new spin on things. It's not going to be a terribly powerful launch. What was it, like 60, I think?
I think it's 60 miles per hour. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be like that's a good ballpark for most of your launch coasters nowadays that aren't like the big 400 footers.
Yeah.
I mean, Storm Runner is like 72. I mean, you know, your Flight of Fears I think are in the 50s. You know, those. You know, it's a fairly standard number.
And I really think that that's going to set it apart from the other wing coasters, just because of that one element, just because that they're going to put you into this effects house. They're going to do some lightning effects. They're going to do some fog effects, and then they're going to open the door and you're going to launch out. And that's going to be a completely new experience for the wing coaster. And I really like that idea of them really setting themselves apart. Looking at the ride itself and the theme, I think the theme is pretty cool. You know, at first I was like, I don't get the whole farm thing going on. That if you look at the ride, it's flying through barns, it's flying through like modern day stuff. And, you know, and the reason why I didn't get it is they put on the whole 66 days at sea. Was it 66? 60?
Yeah, I mean, the whole theme, it didn't seem... It does now because of the story, but when you first saw it and saw the whole farming thing and you saw the orange track and everything and you heard Thunderbird, it didn't seem like it was completely conducive. It didn't seem like it connected perfectly. I know what you're talking about, but you know, once you kind of hear the story and you hear their justification behind it, it does make some sense. And I know for you, it kind of put your mind at ease and you kind of said, okay, now I get it.
Well, and the whole thing was like, it's going into the Thanksgiving section. Holiday World's always been very holiday orientated, obviously, where every single ride fit into that holiday perfectly. And I just think at some point that idea runs its course, where it's a fun concept. But if you want to keep creating innovative names and innovative merchandising, that you have to start moving away from the holiday theme and start making things like Thunderbird. And they found a way. At first I was like, I don't know, you know, because it doesn't fit. I don't get the Thanksgiving. But then they tied the 66 days at sea with the Pilgrims. And they tied it all together that they were swept at, you know, home by this great bird. And then they found this journal in this old farm that they're portraying this area to be, that this old farm, this journal was buried underneath the ground. They found the journal, and now the Thunderbird's back in this area,
right,
you know, protecting the area once again. So it's a cool idea. It's definitely a cool theme. The name I'm not completely sold on. It's,
I like the name. I always like when you have like, you know, you have those little combined names. You have like Firehawk, Thunderhawk, you know, Firebird. You know, the I guess the term I've used is like the badass names, where it's like you kind of combine two things. Like one that I made in No Limits a long time ago was Fire Ray, and the logo was like a blue stingray with red eyes, like that kind of thing, where you're combining like an element and then like an animal or something. Like you can always get cool. You can always get cool stuff with it, you know, Iron Dragon, you know, forget about the ride for a minute, but that's a cool name.
It is a cool name.
You know, you get that kind of feel for it. You know, I'm a fan of it. I like it. You know, I think going back to an editorial that I wrote a long time ago about I forget, I think it's called Wing Rider Invasion or Wing Coaster Invasion, and, subtitled Why the Newest Coaster Type is Here to Stay. I believed as soon as we saw the Wing Coaster come to the United States that it is going to be the next inverted coaster. It's going to be the next flying coaster. I think it's going to be bigger than the stand-up. It already is.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
it's going to be bigger. I think eventually it's going to be bigger than the flying coaster. I think it will be almost as big as the inverted coaster. Any park worth its weight in salt nowadays really has an inverted coaster. And, in Holiday World's case, they were really lacking that steel coaster. That's what people have said about it for years. Yeah, you could go for a new wood coaster there, but you have Raven, you have Legend, you have Voyage. What does another wood coaster do for them? That the other three really that don't do already. You've got 3 awesome night rides, at least from what I'm told. You've got an airtime machine and an absolutely relentless monster in Voyage. You've got a great mix of laterals and airtime and, length on Legend as well as Voyage. And then Raven is kind of like your in-between coaster where it's a little smaller, but you've got that nice terrain ride. All 3 of them are good terrain rides. What could you, aside from inversions, what does another wood coaster really have to offer that they haven't done already?
Yeah.
I think the steel coaster was the way to go, and I think the wing coaster was the way to go because, as I put in my blog, there's 2 things we learned from Thunderbird. One, we learned that B&M is all in with this wing coaster design. They're not going to stop coming. It very much like RMC and these looping wooden coasters. I was a little hesitant about the looping wood coasters. I rode Outlaw Run, prepared to hate it, and really liked it. Now, I haven't ridden Goliath, but I'm skeptical about that just for pure length reasons. But the looping wooden coaster thing has kind of started to grow on me as long as it's done properly. And the wing coaster thing, same thing. As long as it's done properly and done correctly, I think you have to have some fly-throughs, which Holiday World is doing to kind of get the full effect of it. But you got to keep it unique. You can't just have, like, the Batman rides. Like, okay, it's an inverted coaster, but you got to make it different. Kings Island did it with Banshee. You have the top speed at the end of the ride. You've got a nice theme for what Cedar Fair does, as much theming as Cedar Fair is going to do. And they changed it up with, you've got the little barrel roll, which we never saw on an inverted coaster like that before. So B&M is showing that they're committed to this new design, man. They're willing to try new things with it because they think it's here to stay. They think they're going to keep doing it. So that's one thing. B&M is committed to the wing coaster. And secondly, I think it shows that Holiday World is going after those people that are going to Kentucky Kingdom.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
With Kentucky Kingdom opening this year and Banshee opening at Kings Island, I wouldn't be surprised if Holiday World took a big attendance hit this year. I don't know when their numbers come out or if we ever find out what their numbers are. I'm sure they come out at some point. But when Kentucky Kingdom closed, a lot of Louisville people went to Holiday World instead. And from what we've been hearing, the attendance numbers at Kentucky Kingdom are through the roof. And that's not going to change because they're expanding. They're refurbishing T2, soon to be T3. They're refurbing Twisted Twins. Who knows what's going to be done with those 2 rides yet? We haven't heard much on that front. And Banshee, Kings Island, their attendance, I'm sure, is through the roof this year. They set an opening day record this year, about 47,000 at opening day, is what I was told by one of the admission guys. So Holiday World is committed to competing with these parks, and especially Kentucky Kingdom, because that's stealing from one of their big markets. So, Indianapolis and Louisville are their big markets. So Holiday World needed something like this to show that, we're not just going to let this new park walk all over us and take our people away that we got from them. They may not be saying that, but that's a big part of this too.
And I'm excited.
They had to make a splash.
Yeah, and I'm excited for Holiday World in the future and moving forward now. I don't for a second expect them to do installations on the level of any corporate park like Six Flags or Cedar Fair.
No, not at all.
But this shows you that they're not afraid to go out there and do something that's not technically something they've done before. They've never had a steel coaster of this magnitude, especially one that your first one you pick has a launch on it that we know is typically hard to maintenance, hard to keep up sometimes. Like, this is a huge undertaking for this park, especially this park in general. And I think it shows that they are willing to go out there and innovate and change their identity and do something that's unexpected. And it makes me hopeful for the future. I know a lot of people were questioning the family and questioning Holiday World after the big breakup of the family and the company and all this and all that. People were questioning it. And I think this ride has reaffirmed the faith of many people who love that park, of coaster enthusiasts, of just general fans of the industry. Many people now say that this park, because of this announcement, is back on the right track, that they've put all the nonsense behind them, and now they can move forward into the future. And this is that future. This is it, which I think is just really, really cool.
Yeah, and like you said, it shows that they're listening to the people, because, one of the things they said was, for years, people have asked, when are you going to build a big steel coaster? When are you going to build a big steel coaster? If you said, what's missing from Holiday World, 99 out of 100 people would probably say, a big steel coaster. And, they're going with that. They know that that's kind of what they needed to kind of complete the park lineup, and it's them taking a chance. It's them taking a chance on this. Okay, the wing coaster isn't new, the launch coaster isn't new, but doing a launch with a wing coaster is new to B&M. And they were willing to say, you know what, you've got such an outstanding track record, we're going to take a chance on this, and we're going to work through this with you. So even if there's growing pains, we're going to get this right, because not only does B&M have to get this right to continue to push forward with the wing coaster and especially their launch coaster. If this thing has issues, that's not going to go anywhere. B&M needs to get it right. Holiday World needs to get it right too, because now they have direct competition right up the road. So
exactly,
both parties need to get this right, and the fact that this has probably been in the works a lot longer than any of us know that it has been shows that I think that they're committed. They're back on the right track, like you said. They're committed to getting this right because they have to.
Yeah, and because I brought it up, I kind of want to throw this out there too, since we're talking about the family and stuff. I want to throw out that Dan Koch down in Alabama is going to be reopening Rampage next year.
Oh, yeah.
And that, right. and he says that the retrack, like, I follow him on Twitter, and he says that the retrack is done, that they're basically waiting on new trains and maybe the chain for the lift hill. That was a few weeks ago even. So Rampage is going to be reopening, which supposedly for all accounts is just an out of this world wood coaster, and he's keeping it a wood coaster.
Right, yeah.
So, just overall, it seems like the family has come to some sort of resolution at some point. At least we know that, hey, I'm going to be taking part of this park. Dan's gone down there to Alabama Adventure and said, this is what I'm going to do. And then obviously Holiday World's going to be left to the other part of the family. So it looks like everyone is going to be doing something in the theme park industry still, which I think is best, because they are very good at what they do. That most people say that Holiday World is one of their favorite parks to go to. Even me, I don't like family-owned parks most of the time. I'm a corporate park type of guy, and I love Holiday World. Holiday World was amazing, and I'm kind of excited to see what Dan does with Rampage and how he builds up that park, because he's got a blank slate down there too. He's got an open canvas to do whatever he wants. So I'm excited to see what happens down there, down south.
I am too. I hope that at least the family, if they're not best of friends right now, at least hopefully they're on speaking terms, and they can get this right, because like I said, they have to get this right. Otherwise their attendance will start to suffer. I mean, Holiday World isn't going anywhere, but I mean, the fact that their numbers may drop if they don't get this right is a big motivator for them, and that's they have to do it, and they're doing it. They're committed to it, which is great to see because it only means they're going to grow.
For sure. Well, do you want to talk about Six Flags tonight, or do you want to save that for the next show? We'll leave it up to you, Dan.
We can talk about it for a few minutes. I mean, I don't think any of our thoughts on the Six Flags stuff is really going to surprise anyone.
Well, let me start with this then. What was your favorite announcement? Maybe we'll just go with that. What was your favorite announcement out of all the Six Flags parks?
Well, you and I talked about this a little off air. We talked about it the day of the announcement. My favorite one by far is Wicked Cyclone. I know people aren't too high on the logo. I like the logo. Let's start with that. People are like, it's too childish, it's too cartoony. That's what I like about it. I like the kind of, I talked about the whole badass name thing and the logos that go along with it. Your best logos are a little cartoony. I mean, the Diamondback logo, that's cool, but it's got a little cartoony thing. I mean, the tongue is the dragon. The Banshee logo, I mean, yeah, that's cartoony, but it's really cool. The Thunderbird logo, I mean, that's a neat logo. Some of the best logos are cartoony, and this one does look a bit more childish, but I like it. The ride itself is reminding me of kind of a slightly smaller, more compact New Texas Giant, and I know you weren't a big fan of the New Texas Giant. You and I have had that discussion. I love the New Texas Giant. It was my 300th coaster, and I rode it in the front on that day. I rode it in the back last year. The back was my part, and you're entitled to your opinion because you said you just flat out didn't like it.
I didn't like it, and when I was talking to you the other day about it, I watched the point of view video of it again, and I'm sitting there like, no, even the point of view video is boring to me. I'm like, this is doing absolutely nothing for me. Doing nothing for me.
Well, and that's one that we have quite not a lot, but we have a good handful of coasters that we agree to disagree on in terms of that, and that's fine. That's the great thing about this. We get to talk about stuff like that. But
and that's the weird part too, is that like when I look at RMCs and I go down the list, I loved Outlaw Run. I loved Iron Rattler. I think Goliath is a great ride. So for the I've ridden, four out of the 5 RMCs that they've done, and 3 of them are at the top of my list, and New Texas Giant's just not even on my list. I don't even rank it because it just does nothing for me. But
yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame that you didn't like it. I don't know what else to say. It sucks that you didn't get much out of it because I thought it was a great ride. I don't think it deserves like number 3 on the Mitch Hawker poll. I don't put it quite that high, but I enjoyed it. Wicked Cyclone it looks like it's going to be a more compact version of that. You said you didn't seem to really like Medusa Steel Coaster. I think Medusa looks like it might be the best one of the 3 that exists currently. But I've watched
that point of view too, and the point of view on Medusa, it didn't appeal to me. And I think I've come down to it, and what I figured out is I'm not a fan of the overbank turns. My least favorite part of Iron Rattler are the overbank turns up at the top of the canyon. New Texas Giant, when I watched the point of view, it starts with the first drop and then you go into 3 consecutive overbank turns and they do nothing for me. Even on Goliath to some extent, the first overbank turn is a little fun, but there's only 2 of them on there because it's so stinking short. So the first one's okay, and the second one's just kind of like, it's the overbank turns on the RMCs don't do anything for me. So if a ride focuses on that, like New Texas Giant does a lot, and I think Medusa does a lot as well, it's not for me. But Wicked Cyclone, on the other hand, I don't think it has a lot of overbank turn.
14 airtime moments. 14 airtime hills they're talking about. Now, it does have some overbank turns mixed in there, but I think it's not to the point where... And, see, I thought that there was some decent airtime coming out of the overbanks in the back of New Texas Giant. Iron Rattler, I thought, was a good mix. I just didn't like how short Iron Rattler was. And, you know, Outlaw Run even was a really good mix, too, because on Iron Rattler, you get that awesome first drop. You get an airtime hill, then you get an overbank, then you get an overbank, then you get the 0G roll. Then you get an airtime hill, then you get that little serpentine run at the top, then you get 2 airtime hills, and then you get the tunnel, and then the airtime coming into the break run. You know, Texas Giant has the airtime hill before that first overbank, then you got overbank, 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 airtime hill, break run, and then the second half is more airtime. Although, as we've discussed, when you go through, once you get into the tunnels, it kind of does meander a little bit because it's kind of running out of steam, but it has to get all the way back to the station. So there's kind of a point in the tunnels where it's not really doing anything, and then it kind of hits 2 small bunny hops, which are pretty good at the end. New Texas Giant is kind of right outside my top 10. I think it's like 12 or 13 on my steel list somewhere. Iron Rattler is not far behind it. I think like 17, 18. They're both in my top 20, if I had to look where I had them as of last look. But Wicked Cyclone really looks like a compact version of the New Texas Giant. It's going to have a lot of airtime. It's going to have a 200-degree outside bank turn, which is kind of like taking Outlaw Run's element and turning it all the way around. So that'll be an interesting element to go all the way around on that kind of thing and then cut back rather than going almost all the way. So I see you looking out the window there. Anyway, long story. Anyway, I said this to you the other day. For me, Wicked Cyclone, I think it looks like it's going to be a nice length of a ride because the original Cyclone was even though the ride track itself wasn't incredibly long, I thought the ride time was pretty nice. I think what I said to you in my, verbatim was Wicked Cyclone looks like what I wish Goliath would have been. And I haven't ridden Goliath, so I can't speak to it. You've ridden Goliath. But everyone I've talked to said that I've heard everything like you have said it's a good ride, but it's too short. And I've heard people say it was that they thought it was boring and that it was way too short. So Wicked Cyclone, when I heard about Goliath and we knew that they were doing something, I kind of wish that they would have put more into it like they did. Wicked Cyclone really goes back over itself a lot like the original one did. So there's one point where right by the drop, I think there's like 3 sets of track right next to each other there, like there was on the original. I'm really looking forward to Wicked Cyclone because it's kind of what I wish Goliath would have been, even though I haven't ridden it, if I'm going to judge it just based on pictures and videos. It's what I wish Goliath could have been, or what I think it could have been.
Well, I'm going to change, and some people will be like, oh, well, you're probably going to talk about, Twisted Colossus, and I'm not at all. My favorite Six Flags announcement is actually the Justice League Dark Ride. Those 2 rides at Over Texas and St. Louis, I think they're going to be outstanding. Now, keep in mind that over in Australia at Movie World, they've already built one of these Justice League Dark Rides. So you can go online and find a pretty good point of view video to understand what this is kind of going to look like. It's going to use the same ride technology. It's the same company who built that one is building the cars for this one. And obviously it's Sally Darkride that's going to be doing all the, 3D props and everything, the actual mannequins and all that. And the one down there is pretty cool. They have this whole storyline with, you probably don't know him because he's an obscure villain, with Starro the Conqueror. And basically what Starro does is to take over the world, he puts big starfish on people's faces. and they basically take over, like they basically are like mind control. So like he can take over anybody.
Oh, okay, yes, okay.
And it's actually kind of brilliant to use that story because Sally Darkride can basically use every single mannequin they already have already made and just put a starfish on their face and boom, you have it. You can put it in the Darkride now. So you really don't have to create a lot of custom stuff. Now the custom stuff that they did build for that is they made a cyborg character, and they also made Supergirl character, and those two look amazing. They look out of this world amazing. So add that to all the 3D stuff you're going to get, and I think that these Justice League rides are going to be really sweet. Now, the other part of this too is in Australia, they built this huge Hall of Justice. So when you actually walk into the Dark Ride, you have this it looks like it's not real marble, but it's all fake marble, and they have huge statues of the Justice League members, and they have this whole newscast story being broadcast. The whole experience looks like it's going to be awesome, and I'm really excited, especially since St. Louis is so close to me. I'm really excited about checking that out next year. Obviously, I'm not going to go to over Texas more likely than not, but St. Louis, this is going to be pretty sweet, I think. So I'm kind of excited to see what actually happens with this Justice League ride.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, we can talk about Wonder Mountain's Guardian later on in a later episode, but when a dark ride is done properly, it's probably the best type of attraction at a park. That's evident with the way that Disney has done certain dark rides and Universal. I mean, Universal does nothing but dark rides almost. I mean, Harry Potter, Spider-Man, Twister, Disaster, Transformers, Simpsons. Yeah. Those are all dark rides.
Men in Black.
Those are all great dark rides.
Yeah,
Men in Black. There you go. You got a shooter there. So, and I think we're starting to see that kind of trickle down to the regional parks. You have Canada's Wonderland doing Guardian, and they have the Boo Blasters for the Paramount Park. Former Paramount parks have the Boo Blasters because Paramount kind of had the movie properties to go along with that. But it's nice to see that in Canada's Wonderland's case, they're investing in a dark ride that is their own story. Like I talked about when we talked about Fury, it's their own story that no one else can have that exact story. For Six Flags, with the superhero, the DC Comics brands, they're able to use that to their advantage and build a story around it. They can kind of, for Six Flags, like I said, one conducive brand, they can now cart that idea to all those other parks. And they have characters that people know. So it'll be good to see what they do with it. We've seen them try to do stuff like this in the past with like the Dark Knight Mouse in a Box coasters. So what I'm really, really hopeful for is that they keep it up once it's there. Because we all know how bad dark rides can be, especially shooters. We all know how bad those shooters can turn out if they're not maintained. And from the people I know up at Canada's Wonderland, because I frequent that park, they are paying the utmost attention to make sure that those guns are always working, the video is always working. They are keeping that ride in tip-top shape, and they're committed to keeping it like that because they know, since that ride is all screens, spoiler alert, all screens, no live scenery, if anything with that video or the shooting system goes by the wayside, that ride is nothing.
It's pointless.
Right. And same thing with like the Dark Knight coasters and the Battle for Metropolis dark rides. If the theming isn't kept up, we see the same thing with Verbolten too. If those scene elements aren't kept up, the best part of that ride goes away. And then it becomes sad, and then it's just another roller coaster. Then it's just another ride that goes through a dark building where you don't really see a whole lot. So I'm really hoping – I'm excited for those too. I'm really hoping that this is a big opportunity for Six Flags. We talked about how Holiday World has a big opportunity. Six Flags has a big opportunity to do something right here if they keep these dark rides well maintained and they keep them running well. So I hope they do that, because aside from Wicked Cyclone, none of the other announcements were incredibly exciting to me. I mean, you mentioned Colossus. Colossus looks like a fantastic addition, or modification, I guess. It looks like it's going to be a very, very fun ride. But along the same line of Goliath, it's kind of bittersweet, because Goliath looks like an awesome roller coaster of a Great America. Twisted Colossus looks like a fantastic roller coaster, but you wish it was more. You wish that there was a little bit more to it, and that's the thing. It's kind of, and it's not even like a Leviathan type of thing or an Outlaw Run where, it was a little short, I wish it would have gone longer. You really wish there was actually more meat to it. So Goliath looks like a fantastic roller coaster. Twisted Colossus looks like it's going to be a fantastic roller coaster, and it's going to be really good for them. And I think maybe it's a little deceptive because it is all one track. I know you have your issues with that. I personally don't mind that. I think it'll be good because you get to go around essentially twice for the price of one. So I think maybe the whole wishing it was more thing will probably go away, considering you do get essentially two rides for the price of one, even though similar. So that doesn't bother me as much, but I wish the tracks themselves were a little longer, because if they would have linked those two together and would have maybe followed more of the original Colossus, they could have had a length record. They could have actually had a legitimate record rather than just, I don't know what they're saying, the world's first hybrid high five. That's not a record that anyone gets really excited about. I mean, the world's longest roller coaster, that's something that, okay, you can pat yourself on the back for that one. That record hasn't been broken in over a decade. It's been Steel Dragon over there in Japan. So, that would have been something cool. Again, it looks like an awesome ride. Twisted Colossus does. You just wish there was a little bit more to it, but I think if the dark rides will make or break this season of editions for Six Flags. If the dark rides, because Twisted Colossus is going to be a hit, that Wicked Cyclone is going to be a hit, pretty much. And honestly, even Batman down at Fiesta, Texas is going to be a really good hit for those people down there. Not so much with the coaster folks, because we've kind of done that already on the Zack spins, so it maybe doesn't get us quite as excited as it would other people down there. But I think and we know what people are saying about the Super Loops. I think the two dark rides and how successful they are, and it may not even be this year. It may be 3 or 4 years down the road when we see how these progress. The 2015 editions for Six Flags will be made or broken with how well those dark rides are maintained and how much of a success those dark rides are. Yeah. Those are kind of like the anchor here, because, you always get a couple roller coasters and they're always pretty good. What did Six Flags get this year? They got, besides Goliath, what were their other coasters this year? Was that they had another one. Where did
they got Goliath and they got Medusa.
Okay, so you had Medusa.
That's why I couldn't
think of that one right away. Right. So, Goliath and Medusa are both hits. It's the smaller stuff where they're spending a lot of money, but it's not really a roller coaster. The roller coasters are always a hit. The roller coasters always.
Yeah, Six Flags. This year they spent a lot of money on there's two parks that installed the water teacup type deals. A bunch of parks did some water park expansions. Obviously, Over Georgia installed an entire water park. So there's a lot of water-based stuff going on this year. Next year, it's a lot of inversion-based stuff, I guess, if you want to set a theme to it.
That's a good way to put it. Well, and on Wicked Cyclone, the inversions don't bother me. They don't seem as out of place as they did on, not even Goliath. Goliath's inversions look really cool.
They are.
I kind of said it. I mean, I really liked Outlaw Run, but before I rode it, it seemed like the double barrel roll was kind of there just for the sake of going upside down, but I really liked the double barrel roll. I know you weren't as much of a fan of it, but on Cyclone, the inversions don't seem like just an excuse to say you're going upside down as much as they feel like on an Outlaw Run. And again, I loved Outlaw Run. I'm not trying to say I didn't like Outlaw Run because I loved Outlaw Run. But the double barrel roll at first seemed like just an excuse to go upside down on a wood coaster. Wicked Cyclone, I don't get that impression as much. So we'll have to see. I think, and the same thing with Colossus. The inversions look really cool, how they're crossing over. I'm interested to see how long it is before people get hit on the head with stuff. So we'll see how long those racing and dueling things last, because I have a feeling we'll see lawsuits before too long after that, unless they put like nets in between the track. I don't know.
That would be terrible.
That kind of ruins the effect. But we've seen it happen down at Dueling Dragons or Dragon Challenge. Unfortunately, they don't do it anymore. So that's another thing, like the Dark Ride thing. It's upkeep and how well they keep that theming going. And even though Twisted Colossus isn't really a theme, a lot of that ride has to do with racing. It's when you see a ride like Rebel Yell or a Racer. And Dueling Dragons, too, when you see the loops, it's like, oh, well, they're not going to do that? Well, that kind of sucks.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Especially when you can see that they're supposed to do that. So it's not like Lightning Racer, you can almost get away with it because they're not always next to each other, or like Gwazi, they pass by each other. You can almost get away with it there. But like a Racer or a Rebel Yell, when you only got one side going. So, you know, it may not be this year. It may be a few years down the road where we'll see how long they're committed to keeping it up. But I love Wicked Cyclone. I love the dark rides. I like Twisted Colossus. I'm not as in love with it as I am with Wicked Cyclone, but I do like Twisted Colossus. It looks like it's going to be a really cool ride. So, we'll see. And then the other stuff, you and I aren't that excited about. Batman. I've done it. Have you been on the Zack Spin out at Magic Mountain?
I have not. I've never done it, and it doesn't seem like it appeals. You're not even excited
to do it, so
yeah, it doesn't appeal to me.
So, right. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, it'll be a thrilling ride, and it'll be a fun ride. The Batman will kind of be more of like a quirky, gimmicky thing more than anything, whereas Twisted Colossus, the Battle for Metropolis, and Wicked Cyclone look like they're going to be exceptional rides.
Thank you for joining us here tonight, and thank you for listening to us talk about the great new additions for 2015 that we've gone through. And we hope to see you again here on COASTER.net Uncut. I'm, of course, Andrew Rybarczyk.
And I'm Danny Miller from Rochester, New York.
And as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.